The best way to describe it is a TED Talk, a 15-minute TED Talk, while serving 12 coffees.
How many kilograms of equipment did you have to take to Greece?
Yeah, it was around 140 kilos. So it was the milk.
Took the milk.
I took the milk, yeah.
Cold milk.
Cold milk, yeah.
How do you get cold milk to Greece?
Good question.
You are the best in the world at making espresso shots.
Yeah, yep. So I would visit some really nice coffee shops.
Right.
And it was a highlight of my day. And then I would start making an AeroPress, like on the building site at Smoko and lunchtime. And on my day off, I went there and I saw a little job advert in the window and didn't think I was any chance because I had no experience. Probably in the high vis top, handing you my resume.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough they decided to take me on. I'm Jack Simpson, and this is the Good People Podcast.
It's a tip of the cap, it's a pat on the back, it's a smile from ear to ear. They're the good people from round here.
Yes, welcome to another episode of the Good People Podcast, brought to you by In Other Good News. My name is Andy, and on this show I get to talk to the good people from around here. Sometimes these good people are from around here, but they get to go to some amazing places all over the world. My guest today has actually just come back from Greece. He is a young guy. He's got a lot of potential and he's dominating in his industry at the moment. He is the Australian Barista Champion, recently crowned. And he is joining me in the studio today to tell us all about coffee and why it matters. Jack Simpson, welcome to the Good People Podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure having you on the show. And I'm going to, from the outset, I'm going to say you and I have got a little bit of history.
We do.
Which is exciting. I'm so excited for you when I found out that you won the Australian Barista Championship, because you started your coffee journey when we both worked together in the same coffee shop.
Yeah, that was going back maybe 10 years, right?
It's a long time ago. And we were both working in the same place, and you were a apprentice carpenter.
I was, yeah. So, I was coming into the cafe like probably once a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, saw the job advert on the front window and, decided to hand in my resume and...
Yeah. So give up the tools.
Yeah.
With your calloused hands.
Yep.
And your splinters.
Yes.
And you want to replace it for burns and the smell of old milk. But you walked in and you said, I want to have a crack at making coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you did.
Yeah.
And now you make the best coffee.
Well, yeah, some would say, but...
Well, you make the best coffee in Australia.
Yeah.
According to the results. The results are in.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That's unbelievable. I want to quickly touch on what that means, and then we're going to rewind, talk about your coffee journey.
Yep.
What is the Australian Barista Championship? What does it mean? And then we'll talk about like what is in it, because it's nuts. It's a nutso sort of a thing.
Yeah. I guess for people that don't know, the Australian Coffee Championship is a competition that's held every year. And it's basically, the best way to describe it is a TED Talk, a 15-minute TED Talk, while serving 12 coffees.
Yep.
So 4 espressos,
Yep.
4 lattes, and then 4 signature drinks, which is basically a cocktail that's coffee dominant without alcohol.
Right.
Which is synergistic to your routine and talk.
Right. So it all connects.
Yes.
And you make a series of drinks.
Yep.
You've got a limited time?
15 minutes.
Exactly 15?
We can go over time, but then you start losing points, and then
points.
16 minutes it's disqualified.
Yep.
So
and disqualified at 16.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Lots of ways to get disqualified.
Right,
So
okay. So dropping a Band-Aid in it, would that be
you're disqualified.
So don't
Haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
So
but it's not so much that because for you turning out 12 shots in 15 minutes, I mean that's nothing. That's not a challenge.
yeah.
That's not the hard bit. What's hard now, if you want to get online and watch, there's videos of you in the competition.
There is.
This is what I want to tell people about, because this is not like a busy cafe. Even making amazing coffee, turning them out hundreds per hour, whatever. This is a very specific thing.
Definitely.
So do you want to talk us through what's the difference between a great barista at a coffee shop who may be able to make a fantastic coffee?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's not the same as in the Barista Championship.
Yeah, I think the outcome's a little bit different. So in a cafe, obviously speed and quality is top of the list. But in the competition, you've got a bit more time. So you can make 12 coffees in 15 minutes quite easily.
Yep.
But it's about the small details that you put in there, and like in terms of like training for it, I think about every single detail and how I can get 1% better in the cup every time.
Yeah.
And so that could be a myriad of things.
What's a 1%er? Like what helps it improve by 1%?
Yeah, lots. So the way you sort of like, tamp the portafilter, which is what the coffee goes in.
Yep.
The temperature, the way you store the beans.
Yep. Even what beans you use.
What beans you use, exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's really important.
Yeah, well, some people might not know, but with the competition, you bring your own coffee.
Yes.
So that's another story where we go through and we try as many coffees as we can from different origins, different farms, different producers, different processing methods, to find what we think would be the best one to serve to the judges.
Yeah. And what are the judges looking for? What do they want?
Lots of things.
Yep.
But we're looking for balance in the espresso.
Yep.
Something's a bit different. It's a bit unique with a good story. I think is always plays well.
Mm-hmm.
But you sort of have to describe it as well. So we tell the judges what it's going to taste like, how the sensation in their mouth.
Yep.
And then they're scoring against that as well. So it's a high quality coffee, and as well as how can we describe that and how well do we describe it?
So are they also judging you on, did you make what you're saying you're making?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Do you think it can go the other way in that you can tell them what's in it and they'll say, oh, yeah, that is in it?
Yeah, well, that's the goal, right? Yeah. It doesn't happen like that all the time because you've got 4 judges, right?
Yeah.
Plus a head judge.
Right.
And to get all of them to agree at the same time is very difficult.
Yep.
So more often than not, you might get 1 or 2 that sort of get the flavor notes, and one or 2 might not get it as strongly. So
okay.
That's when we look for a coffee. We look for coffees with defined flavors and attributes, so judges can agree.
So that's part of your process of and it's not just, that's the thing. Again, you're not just making coffee for people. You're actually doing a performance.
Oh, 100%.
You're talking and giving them all the flavor notes and all of the parts at the same time as making it to the best of your ability under pressure in the moment.
Yes.
What I really want to ask is, how do you come up with your entire menu? Like, are you using the same coffee all the way through, or like, what do you do? How do you do that?
Yeah. So every competitor is different.
Yep.
So some use 2 coffees, 3 coffees.
3 different beans?
Yes.
A variety of beans.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, or origin or process.
Yes.
Could be the same variety, same farm, but just processed differently.
Right.
So there's things like that you can do. But for me, I tend to like using 1 coffee because I've only got 15 minutes. So as soon as I introduce another element, which obviously the coffee that you're using is very important. So if I introduce another one, it's quite hard to fit it in there and explain a lot about it. But if it ties into your concept and you can deliver it well, it's always worth it.
Yeah. I did watch some of the videos and I see some of the other contestants do use a blend and they go, for this one, I'm using 20% this. And so that's an extra layer of complexity that you have to do. Also, I noticed that you explain things like on the way through, you say, I'm using 22 in, 35 out at 93 or whatever you do.
Good memory.
Do you want to explain those things? Yeah,
definitely. So with the competition, obviously a lot of training goes into it. And behind the scenes, we've got a little training room at Axel there.
This is Axel Coffee Roasters.
Axel Coffee Roasters.
Yes, who you work for. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So I'll get the coffee.
Yep.
And so we have the same machine that we're using for the competition, same grinders, and all my equipment there. Basically, if people that don't know, we dial in coffee to a recipe. So it's like baking a cake, basically. So the coffee that goes in the portafilter, like the dry coffee, the coffee that comes out, the liquid, the espresso, and as well as the time. So they're the three variables that we try and control.
So 22 would be like 22 grams of coffee.
Exactly.
Yep. And then 30. What's 35?
35 grams of espresso.
Right.
Yeah.
Of liquid.
Yes.
Yep.
So we measure the weight.
Yep.
So old school coffee makers used to do the volume.
Uh-huh.
So they used to have little shot glasses on the side with the mills on the side.
Yeah.
But depending on age and the way the coffee's degassing, the mills can change.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a bit more precise to get the actual grams that come out.
And when you say degassing, so that's after the roasting.
Yep.
There's a period of time where it's degassing, or it's actually constantly degassing, right?
Yes.
But that's a half-life scientific situation where heaps at the start,
Yes.
less as it gets further on.
Exactly.
So you're choosing, do you even get down to choosing how many days after the roast?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So that's another tricky thing, like transporting it to Greece as well. That's, normally with competitions or the Australian competition, you don't have to travel very far. But I had to travel in a plane with, different pressures with the bags and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I'll interrupt you there
Yep.
because what you've launched into is you went to Greece,
Yes.
which I touched on in the
Yep.
intro, because you competed in the World Barista Championships.
I did, yes.
The world. So
Yeah.
the best coffee makers in the world.
Yeah.
How'd you go?
came third.
You came third, which
Yeah.
is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And you
Happy
got
with that.
beaten by, I saw, a Brazilian
Yes.
and an Italian,
Yes.
which I think is probably okay.
Yeah, it's okay. They're pretty good. So I'm happy with that.
They're good at what they do. But I
Yes.
watched a video of that and I say, how the hell do the judges pick? It's so complex.
Yeah, I think especially when you're coming down to the final six.
Yeah.
So there's 3 rounds. So there's an open round, which I think this year there was around 50 countries that entered.
Yep.
And they've all won their own national competition.
Yeah.
So there's one person from every country that enters.
Yep.
And that gets dwindled down to 16. And then it's a final 6. So
Yeah.
once you get to the final 6, it's very close. So it's a tough job for the judges to sort of choose a winner.
It's
from that, but-
tiny increments. Like
Yeah.
you're looking at, like you're watching what they do and they're going, oh no, I'm using 23, 34 and 91.
Exactly.
Like, and
Yeah.
and everyone has their own take on what they do and how they do it. Like that's intense. I was
Yep.
watching that and that's amazing. You had to take all your own equipment
I did.
to
Yes.
Greece.
Yep.
How many kilograms of equipment did you have to take to Greece?
Yeah, it was around 140 kilos. So it was. And the funny thing is, I wasn't really thinking about it until like the week before. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah,
How do I get 140
Exactly.
kilos of gear there?
Yeah.
How did you get it there?
yeah. So last minute, I was moving things around because I was training up until I had to leave. So I needed all my equipment. So lucky I had a bit of a support team that was going over, but they were going at different times.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to coordinate that and share some luggage around and pay for a bit of extra luggage.
Yep. So you took grinders?
I took one grinder,
Yep.
which was 25 kilos exactly.
Uh-huh.
I took, I think it was around 20 kilos of coffee.
Coffee beans. This
Coffee
is your
beans.
special Jack Simpson coffee beans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
You've been working on for ages.
Yes.
Competition beans.
Yes.
And you took that with you?
Yep.
Yep.
And then the milk.
You took the milk.
I took the milk. Yeah.
Cold milk.
Cold milk. Yeah.
How do you get cold milk to Greece?
Good question. So the company that I was working with, and their milk was called Riverina, local company, and they were a big help. So they have transported milk overseas a few times. So they were just like, Jack, we'll take care of it.
Oh.
So Eskies, ice packs, bubble wrap. So they packed it really tight and so big Esky. I was a bit skeptical.
Yeah.
And especially through customs for, getting into Europe.
Yeah, it's food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was anticipating a bit of trouble there and documentation that, they were putting in there as well. But they just let me walk straight through. So
That's fantastic.
it was easy enough. Yeah.
But crazy.
Yeah.
You took your own milk.
Yeah.
And so because part of the middle part of your presentation is the milk section.
Yes.
So you need it. You got to have the milk that you actually tell us about your milk because I know
Yes.
that you have a special milk.
Yes. So yeah, I guess part of the competition, you can use any milk you want now. So it used to be you could just use full cream milk, but they've opened it up so you can use alternative milks. And you can also do anything to the milk you want without adding things into it.
Sure.
So I was actually taking things out.
Right.
So I was lucky enough to have access to a freeze dryer So I was basically freezing my milk and under vacuum pressure,
Right.
and with a little bit of heat applied, the water can escape the milk solids. So I was separating the water, 100% water, and leaving the milk solids behind.
Right.
So
Like dehydrating almost.
yeah, basically. It's like if you put it on the saucepan and you cooked it down.
Yes.
But rather than putting it at 100 degrees where it would boil, under vacuum pressure, it would boil at 20 degrees.
Right.
So having that, it was very, it looked after the milk and it wouldn't damage the properties of the milk. You weren't cooking it.
Yeah, that's right. Because milk, it's a natural product,
Exactly.
after all.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that can milk, even when heating 4 coffees. A lot of it is rules of natural products, like human body. Like there's human body related temperatures to do with heating milks and things, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's all connected.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then you've made this special fancy pants milk that you've then carted all the way to Greece. By the way, Greece is hot at the moment.
It is very hot.
They're going through a record heat wave.
Yeah, I just missed it. So I think it's 40, 45 degrees at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a nice 30, 35 degrees. So it wasn't too bad.
Well, it's lucky it was a bit hot in some ways because you couldn't fit any clothes.
True. Yeah. Very, very true. So yeah, I think other than the clothes I was wearing for competition, probably had 2 t-shirts and 1 pair of shorts. So that was about it.
Yeah. What do you wear for competition? What do they make you wear?
Whatever you want, but you've got to try and look good. So just a nice little polo top and some nice pants and shoes.
Yeah. Did you have a fashion council that helped you with this?
Well, funny enough, for the Australian competition, I wore a turtleneck. So I copped a lot of stick for that.
Yeah.
So I didn't take that. So that was the only fashion advice.
People made fun of you for that.
I did. Yeah. I'll bring it back. But
are you a hipster, Jack?
I wouldn't think so, but maybe.
Hipster curious?
Yeah. I think that's a good term. I'll go with that.
Because, there's a reputation. You've got to be a hipster to be good at coffee.
Yeah. Well, no tattoos. That's the thing.
Oh.
No beard. So.
No, well, at the moment.
Yeah, I can grow it out.
You got a funky mo going on
Yeah,
there.
yeah, got something.
Yeah, you got something going on. No turtleneck, though. That is disappointing, although it would have been a little hot.
Yeah, I think if it was colder, maybe I would have tried to sneak it in.
Yeah. And so in the Worlds, you came third. And like I say, I mean, to my untrained eye, and I actually watched the Italian and the Brazilian competitors. I can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
Looking at it, I can't tell the difference. But you even took a vibrating table?
Yes.
What is all that about?
Yeah, so it's like the 1%ers I was talking about before.
Yep.
So anything you can do to increase that espresso, the taste of it, just that little bit. So yeah, it's called distribution, the way the coffee falls into the basket. So, some people might think you just put the coffee in there and just tamp it.
Yep.
But it's
tamping it being squashing it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a lot of pressure that the coffee machine creates. So that's why we tamp it, so it's a nice firm base. But if you get different densities within that basket, you can get some over and under extraction in different areas of that basket.
Yeah, so you're looking for even extraction.
Exactly.
And that's why you got that fancy. Now I'm going to do some actions here.
Yes.
For those who are listening,
Yep.
you can't see this, but you've got a little thing where you twist some little needles through the ground coffee.
Yeah.
And that helps with that too, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that's called the Weiss distribution technique.
How do you spell that?
Weiss.
Okay.
I think. I'm a very bad speller.
Like Weiss bars sounds like.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah. But this is like a new sort of invention, I guess, or innovation of that technique made by Barista Hustle. But it's a series of needles that go through the basket that spin it around and share the coffee weight and distributes it quite evenly.
Yep.
So once that was flat, so I was using those needles to get it perfectly even.
Yep.
But I found there was still sort of little air pockets in there that could sort of, the water could find an easy path through the basket. So the vibrations was filling in those little holes that were left. So I found the combination of those needles plus the vibration made like a really consistent puck, I guess.
Yeah.
So
and so that gives you a predictable, for starters, that's what you need in competition.
Yes.
Predictable, but then you can because you can really only tweak one thing at a time, right? Like you can't tweak too many things, otherwise you don't know what changed what.
Yes, exactly.
So you're just trying to lock every part of it in so that if you dial in the temperature and it's 92 degrees now instead of 91, you know that the other bit's not going to change.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. So for those who are at home with their Nespresso pods or their stovetop mocha pots, this is next level. This is next level sort of stuff. And this is what I find so intriguing because, and if we can go back a little bit, because at that level, that world level competition. Actually, I should mention we can't leave this out. You are the best in the world at making espresso shots.
Yeah. Yep.
The best in the world. You won an extra competition.
I did. Yeah.
While you were there. So I'm sitting here with the best espresso maker in the world. And unfortunately, my coffee machine broke, so you can't even make me one.
Next time, I'll have to come back.
Yeah. Probably better I come to you.
Yeah.
But that's congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
Now, that was different because that wasn't with your coffee, was it? That was just that was what they had there, right?
Yeah. So it was a bit of an invitational event after the main event of the WBC.
Yep. Sounds like wrestling.
Yeah. I say WBC to make it sound cool.
Yeah.
So it was an invitational event where I think they picked the top 20 sort of competitors from the World Barista competition.
Yep.
And it was like a 1v1 elimination competition.
Yep.
Which is, it was great fun. It was on a rooftop bar in the middle of Athens, so you could see the Acropolis in the background.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was a great place to do it. So.
Right. And you're just making little cups of espresso.
Yeah, that's it.
There you go.
Yeah.
How do you win that if everyone's doing the same thing?
Yeah, that's where it's tricky, but I think when you're sort of at that level, and the judges are as well, like little tiny things can make a big difference. Like to make 4 espressos in a row taste the same with the same coffee and same parameters, very difficult.
Yeah.
So
I noticed you're very clean as well. You were very clean in your area.
Yeah, that comes with practice.
Yep.
If you see me on a bar, I'm probably not that clean. Practice that routine so many times. So I worked in places where I would clean and
you have to keep the place clean.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you currently work for Axel.
Yep.
Coffee roasters. They have quite a lot going on. They've got different coffee shops and roastery and all that sort of stuff.
They do. Yep.
Yeah. So you're a busy guy there. But let's go back. Because now that you're the best in the world at that, and the best in Australia at the what do you call it? Like the broad
competition.
Broad competition. Yeah. Barista. Next, tick. What's next?
Yeah.
So, are you gonna have another crack?
Yeah. Well, that's where I'm at now, trying to think about whether I will or not.
Yeah.
It's hard because a lot of effort goes into it. There's a lot of other people involved as well.
Yes.
So I have to consider those people. But yeah, I would love to if I find the right thing to talk about. So that's the other thing. It's
a new innovation or something.
Innovation.
What are your pillars? You talk about the 3 pillars. These are the things that you work on.
Yeah.
So one was innovation.
Yep.
What was the second one?
Refinement.
Yep.
Yep.
This is tacking into your TED talk here.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it is.
Refinement. And then what was the third one?
Adaptation.
Yeah. So you're going to think about different ways to do better coffee, refine it, and then get it into the world.
Exactly. Yeah. I think now in the coffee or the specialty coffee industry, there's lots of new innovations coming out, which is almost, it's not taking over barista, but you'll often see if you go into a cafe now that there's machines that actually steam the milk. There's machines that tamp the coffee. So there's things like that coming in. So I was quite cautious when I was talking about on the stage because I don't want to upset anyone or companies. But I think it's just about the barista sort of making sure we're one step ahead of machines as well.
Why do you say that?
Otherwise, I think we just plateau. If we've just relying on machines and what they're producing, we're not getting better. So I think if we can use those to our advantage, they give us more time. So if we use that time to focus on other things, we can increase the standard, and it just keeps going. So I think without being complacent.
So you could get complacent because the machines are doing. I mean, that's why people buy an automatic coffee machine. They press a button and coffee comes out.
Yes.
We know that it's never the best coffee.
Yep.
But it's coffee, and if you're happy with that, that's why it works.
Exactly. Yeah.
But at your end, in your business, you need to be the best, and so that could be a downside.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I think when I first started, when we were working together, we had machines that were manual.
Yes.
We were tamping ourselves, no automated steaming. So it's good to learn that way. And then you can, rely on machines after that.
Yeah. Well, then you know what the machine's doing and why and how, and then you can improve.
Yes.
But if you learnt straight up on a machine, I think it's like learning to drive in a fancy new car.
Like a Tesla, self-driving Tesla.
Yeah. You're not really learning to drive, are you?
Yeah.
Same sort of thing. Bit of a segue there, though. Sorry. So, I mean, you've touched on it. Let's go back. You walk in to a little shop, a little coffee shop in Brighton, Bay Street, Brighton, called Tucci Brown.
Yep.
Now, I worked there as well. I was never a barista. I was never cool enough. I ran a few coffees, but I also was working in another role while I was there. But when you walk in, you're a chippy. You walk in, you go, I'm going to make coffee. Firstly, I mean, why skip from after you've just finished an apprenticeship? Why skip to coffee?
Well, I didn't finish. So I was about 3 years into it.
Yep.
And I really didn't like it.
Right.
So my parents were pushing me to try and finish it, which is a smart idea.
Yeah. Finish things.
Probably should have listened. But yeah, like it was one of those things. It was lucky enough to take me all around Melbourne, this job. So I would visit some really nice coffee shops.
Right.
And it was a highlight of my day. And then I would start making an AeroPress, like on the building site at Smoko and lunchtime. And
so an AeroPress is like a portable filter coffee machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And I just realized I was looking forward to that the next day.
Right.
And then the weekends going there and going into cafes and stuff. So I was like, I need to do this as a job.
Yeah.
And Tucci Brown was one of those cafes.
Yep.
And then literally one weekend, on my day off, I went there and I saw a little job advert in the window and didn't think I was any chance because I had no experience. And yeah, probably in the high vis top, handing you my resume.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough they decided to take me on.
Yeah, gave you a shot.
Yeah.
And so, mutual friends of ours, amazing cafe. Tucci Brown, they were innovative because they had the best machine and grinders and stuff. So it was a really great setup, but they used high quality products.
Yep.
But it was an immersive sort of cafe experience where they sold the stuff. You're sitting on stuff that was for sale, and it was a really great place to work. But also they had really high standards with their coffee and their food and whatnot.
Definitely.
So a great place to come in and learn.
Oh, 100%.
And then you got the bug.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I think I was there probably 2.5 years.
Yep.
Yep.
You became the manager eventually.
I did.
Yep.
Yeah.
You were there for that. Now, there was a moment in that time where I knew you were set for greatness.
Oh, that's very nice.
There's this distinct moment. And it was when one day, so I used to work upstairs, and there was a moment where when I ordered a coffee I come down to get a coffee, and you said, I'll bring it up. Anyway, when you came upstairs, you delivered me something innovative.
Oh, okay.
The first ever deconstructed latte. You brought me a wooden tray with a shot of coffee and a jug of milk and a cup and a spoon.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're basically saying, do it yourself.
I remember you being very fussy. I think that's why I did it.
So the deconstructed latte, that's a first.
Yeah.
No one does that.
No, I don't
But
think so.
you did.
I did.
So that's how I knew you were set for greatness.
Well, didn't carry on. I haven't seen anyone else do it yet.
Didn't catch it.
Nah.
Didn't catch on. Something else that I tried there with someone, I don't know if it was with you, was instead of steaming the milk and adding it to the shot of coffee, it was put the shot of coffee in with the milk and then steam the milk.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah.
But anyway, innovation. You got to, you got to make some mistakes.
Trial and error.
Yeah, that's right. So Tucci Brown, you got there, you cut your teeth on that. But then you went and started working for a roaster as well. Yeah. So maybe tell us about that. Like what does that involve? Like you're making coffee some days a week and then other days a week you're roasting beans.
I think coffee industry is funny in a way. Like, if you're doing your apprenticeship, you go to TAFE, you learn on the job, and you have to do tests and stuff at the end. But with coffee, there's no pathway, I guess. So you got to try and find your own way of learning.
Yep.
So yeah, working at the cafe, I learned heaps in a short amount of time, which was amazing. And then I found the next step was roasting coffee and learning a bit more of the backstory of where it comes from.
Yep.
Because we often are guilty at some stage of just not really understanding where coffee comes from.
Well, it also touches so many hands, doesn't it?
Oh,
coffee is one of those products that just from between the farm and the cup, it's so many hands
and so much hard work as well.
Yep.
So to learn more about that, I was working full time at Tucci Brown.
Yep.
But I wanted another day to try and learn that backstory, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's why I sort of took that job on.
Yep.
Which is great. And again, really, you learnt a lot from that.
Yeah. So you're roasting beans. And then at some point you decided, I'm out of here. I'm off to Canada.
Yeah.
Screw you, Melbourne. I'm off to Canada. What did you do in Canada?
Yeah. So my partner, Gabrielle,
Right.
she is Canadian.
Right.
So we met here in Melbourne. She was a barista as well.
Really?
Yeah. She still is.
Okay.
But yeah, she wanted to move back to Montreal. So I just went back for a few years and did some coffee over there as well, which is something I always wanted to do, live overseas and, work and do some things over there. Just find, obviously we do things well in Melbourne, but to see how different cultures do it.
Yep.
Which was, amazing experience.
Yeah. And so you were doing some roasting and things over there as well?
Yep. Roasting, barista training.
Teaching other people to be baristas?
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Bit tricky in Montreal if you don't know French that well to do front of house.
Yeah, of course.
So it was good though, because, I get to do some roasting and some barista training. So it slotted in well to what I wanted to do as well.
Yeah, that's nice. And then you've ended up back here in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you reckon Melbourne, why do we do coffee so good in Melbourne?
Yeah, good question. I think we've been doing it for a while, which helps.
Yep.
So I think we're a step ahead. So I think, coffee, especially coffee in Melbourne, started a while ago. I think like Genovese and St. Ali a number of years ago.
Yeah.
They started the ball rolling and a lot of people caught on.
Yeah.
So I think, thanks to those guys for doing such a good job early on. I think it's just a cascading effect from that.
I think it definitely has. Melbourne was the epicenter. And I remember, so we do a lot of trips to Adelaide for family and things, and Adelaide and beyond. And for many, many years, once we left Melbourne, there was nowhere to get a satisfactory coffee between here and Adelaide. In Adelaide, could not find anywhere. So we just sort of grit our teeth and hope for the best and always take some sugar.
Yeah.
Like when they say, do you want sugar? Yeah, chuck a couple in.
Yeah.
it was always terrible.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of it was, bakeries used to do the coffee.
They did.
It was always bakeries with coffee. It's not,
Yeah.
it wasn't a specialty thing. It was we also do coffee.
Yes.
Whereas now it's sort of the other way around. We do coffee and we've got some baked goods.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's spread out, but now in every capital city there's good coffee. Now in all over the world, actually, really.
Yeah, 100%.
And a lot of Australians.
Yes.
A lot of Australians are going overseas and making good coffee in other places.
Yeah. Whenever I travel, it's always you see an Australian, behind the bar or something like that. So it's good to see.
Yeah, it is good. So you went to Canada. You were that Australian. You went to Canada. Took your Melbourne knowledge, went over to Canada. You've come back.
Yes.
So now you're back in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you are now at a point where you are making you've gone next level. You're not satisfied with just teaching other people. What drove you to go into competition?
Yeah. I think it's one of those things, like I was saying, that pathway that doesn't really exist in the coffee world as easily as other industries. So to learn more, that was a big thing. So my boss, David Macon, finished second in the world 2008, I believe.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to learn more and I was going to him. I said, Dave, like, how do I learn more? And he sort of pushed me into competition. And that was sort of why, I guess. So, because I wanted to learn more. And you have to sort of take it on yourself to learn more.
Right. Yeah. Because, you do.
Yeah. Because people won't put it in your lap. So, I was using that as that outlet, which I think helped, tremendously for me to explore those little variables that you normally wouldn't in a cafe.
Yes. Because you have different reasons in a cafe. Your job is get them a coffee quickly.
Yes.
And even reflecting back on that Tucci Brown, there's something they did really well. They would have a line out the door.
Oh, yeah.
But they had the system worked out so that they were turning them over so quick.
Yes.
And at such a high quality. Like, I was always impressed with that.
It was very good.
Yeah. Unreal.
Yeah. And I think something I'll quickly touch on with competitions, a lot of these things we do, people might not see the translation, but like things like scales, people measuring their coffee, that sort of came out of competition.
Right.
And so there's a lot of innovation that happens in competition that slowly trickles down to like cafes and make them faster. So you sort of consider it as like the Formula One of coffee, right?
Yes.
So, they do the innovations on the circuit and that sort of trickles down to everyday cars, like ABS brakes and things like that.
Yeah, of course.
So I think if you think of it similar to that as well. So hopefully you see these innovations start to trickle down.
Yeah. So do you think everyone's going to be sort of vacuum dehydrating their milk?
That's a tricky one because it's a very time consuming. But I do see it in some specialty cafes now that people are serving like freeze distilled milk, which is basically the same process without the vacuum chamber. So they freeze the milk and they let the drip out over time.
Yep.
So we are seeing things like that, which is cool.
Do you think do people appreciate this innovation? Do you think because there is a risk of being a bit hipster wanky. You run that risk, don't
Yes, you do.
Yeah. When you get too passionate about it,
Yeah.
people go, just give me a damn coffee.
Yes.
So, I mean, what's your experience with that?
Yeah. I think it's a balance. And, probably when I was a bit younger, I used to tell customers everything. But finding out what customers want to know, I think is a good start. If someone's coming in a suit and looks short on time, they just want a coffee.
Yeah.
But people that sit down and start asking questions, that's where I love to dive in and tell them more about it, I guess.
Tell them more about it.
So just picking your audience.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Because not everyone cares. Let's be honest. Not everyone cares. But it's like anything that you get really into. There's a high level, there's semi.
Yeah, of course.
There's levels. There's layers. There's layers.
Yeah.
I have to admit, like I know a bit about coffee, but I certainly don't. It was a real eye opener watching the competition because I thought, because I was actually interested, what could you possibly do to win this thing? And in my mind, it was probably just making a right temperature, a coffee with the right temperature, a good extraction or whatever. But I didn't realize you were, you made like some fermented raspberries or something with different, like, what was that all about? You made...
Yeah, so that signature drink that I was talking about before, it's it has to the rules change a little bit this year, but the idea is that to be synergistic with your routine and help you explain what you're talking about, which is very difficult to do. So that's probably why it's there, right? Because it is a difficult task.
Yes.
But the farmer of my coffee, Nesta Lasso, he's very innovative with his fermentation techniques.
So you know the farmer that grows your coffee?
Yeah.
Right.
So
Where's he?
He's based in Colombia.
Right.
And so I met him at the World Barista Championship for the first time. We did a few Skype calls, which was cool. His English isn't great and my Spanish is non-existent.
Yeah,
so
right.
a little bit hard to communicate. But yeah, it was like, I actually had him on stage. I'm not sure if that's on YouTube, but after my competition, we did a bit of a debrief and he came on stage and
nice.
I served him a coffee, which was amazing.
Yeah.
So
that'd be crazy for him because he's growing it.
Yeah.
And then it goes thousands of hands before it gets to you and your wacky hoity-toity competition coffee.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's so far from the crop.
Yeah. But yeah, it's amazing experience to serve him a coffee.
Yeah, that's unreal.
Yeah.
How do you meet the farmer? How do you go about doing that?
I think it's good, like working for a big company, like we have those direct relationships.
Right.
This one we didn't have a direct relationship, but the last 2 years we've bought his coffee and then we've sort of reached out and sort of started to create that, which is really cool.
And how do you choose him? Why him?
So yeah, I tried hundreds of coffees for this competition.
Yep.
And like I was saying before, it's something that's distinct. Hopefully judges can agree on it. And obviously is like world class and amazing coffee. Yeah. So
does it have to be ethically fair trade or any of that?
Fair trade's another conversation.
Right.
Which I'm probably not the best person to speak to, but often we pay a lot higher price than fair trade price. So we pay a lot more than that with this coffee. But it doesn't have to be. But obviously we like to choose a coffee that is representative of specialty coffee. And so,
What's the name of your coffee? What sort of coffee have you got?
So the variety is called Ombligon. Ombligon. Which is basically a loose translation to belly button from Spanish.
Right, so it means belly button.
Yeah. The shape of the green coffee on the tree looks a bit like a belly button.
Yep.
So that hence its name.
Now, a coffee, for those who don't know, is a fruit.
Yeah.
Coffee is a fruit.
Yeah. I try and compare it to wine a little bit, where we've got, Shiraz, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, which is different varieties of grapes.
Yep.
So it's the same thing with coffee. most of the coffees that we're having in cafes are blends of different varieties.
Yes.
But this is just one variety of coffee grown in a certain way and processed in a certain way.
And the reason you stick with one is so that it's unique, because often a single origin is what we'd call that, right?
Yes.
It has distinct characteristics, which allows you to sort of play on that as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you blend coffees together, it's not as articulate. Lots of complexity.
Yes.
But harder to describe.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
in my opinion.
Yeah, that's right. So, so that's good. So you've got belly button coffee.
Yep.
Which is that's how you market it, I reckon.
Yeah.
That's your marketing campaign right there, belly button coffee. And you've worked on this, and then you've met the farmer, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you drink tea?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Do you get to a point where you've had too much coffee? I mean,
all the time. Most days.
yeah.
Yeah.
So thinking back to the cafe, I remember the owner, Mark. He used to say, when people would ask him how much coffee he drank, because he was often behind the machine.
He drank a lot from memory.
He drank a lot, but he would say people would ask him how much he drank, and he said, "I would halve the number," and people were still amazed. So he'd say, "I'd drink 9." He'd say,
Yeah.
and people are like, "What? You have 9 coffees?" Which really means he had 18 coffees. Like that's nuts.
It is. I'm nowhere near that. On a day off, maybe 1, sometimes 2. But it's hard working in coffee and limiting it to 1.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of like sipping and, you know.
What do you drink at home on a weekend when you got nowhere to be, got time?
Yeah, just filter coffee.
Right.
So just V60, coffee through a paper filter.
Yep.
Simple as that.
That's one of those sort of cup-looking things that you put a paper filter in the top,
Yeah.
and
Just old school, which surprises some people, but I think coffee that's roasted well and brewed well tastes amazing just by itself.
I think that's what happens though, isn't it? Once you go deep into coffee, you end up drinking the simple version of coffee.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, instead of green avocado lattes and all of the
For sure.
the crazy stuff that goes around. There you go. Filter. Do you drink your belly button coffee for that? Obligón.
Well, we've actually run out. So we only had limited quantities. That's the other thing with competition. We don't get large quantities just because sometimes they're a bit harder to get, a bit more expensive.
Yep.
But hopefully we'll get some back in soon.
Yep.
Which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. It'd be good to get it back.
Yes.
That's great. When you talk about training, because you touched on drinking too much coffee, is training going to be just a lot of making coffee? What's the training?
Yeah. So it changes. So at the start, like a few months before competition, that's when I'll find like the concept and routine. So that's sort of the fun part, I guess.
Right.
You know, trying and experimenting with different things.
Yep.
The part I love. And then once you sort of settle on, okay, we're finding this makes the coffee better or this makes the milk better. After we sort of, you know, solidify all those things, it's then about putting it into practice. And building that routine. And that's a bit I'm not great at, memorizing speech and workflow.
Because you're talking to a room full of people, like a big, what do you call it? Like I want to not say stadium, but an auditorium. I don't know. What do you call it?
Well, we normally do them in expo centers and they've got like, you know, a bit of a grandstand and stuff.
Yeah.
So
you've got a microphone on. And,
WBC, there's probably a couple of thousand people there watching and which is awesome. It's a spectator sport, but obviously they can't taste the coffee. So it's some people look like they're doing a good job and the coffee might taste terrible. So it's hard for the audience to gauge, but you have to practice and have to be confident on stage. So once I set my routine, I practice it, hundreds and hundreds of times, just going over and over again.
All the words, it's a presentation.
And workflow, you have to match the workflow. And I've got music, so I'm timing it to the music. And so I'd like to get in, you know, finish my routine within sort of like 5 seconds of what I intend to.
What was it, like 14 and a half minutes or something?
Yeah, it was about that. Little buffer just in case something went wrong.
Yep.
So if I put it right to 15 minutes and I spilled an espresso, I couldn't remake one. So leave that little buffer.
Because there's a lot about the presentation too. You've got to bring it over on trays and special cups and all the bits.
Well, they're the things you think about, right? So those cups, like, you know, we try a myriad of different cups.
Right. What's a cup do?
Oh, heaps. So it sounds a bit funny because it's obviously the same content going in there.
Yeah.
But it's the way it enters your mouth and the way it holds temperature. Because if it's a small angle or a large angle, because you've got the crema sitting on top of the espresso and then the liquid underneath. So the way that enters the mouth could different perceptions.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Which is similar to like how a flat white might differ from a latte, say.
Yeah.
Similar to that, like depending on how you drink it.
Yep.
Because it's effectively the same amount of coffee.
Yep.
But it can taste different.
Yeah. Well, even like wine glass as well. Compare it to wine again.
Yeah, wine glass. Yeah.
Rydell have those series of glasses, different shapes for different varietals of grapes.
And whiskey glasses, they have the special shapes all for for different tasting experiences.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you really can go deep, can't you?
Very. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's always like if you compete again, it's always about finding that next level, going a little bit deeper on things you've already thought about.
Yes.
So
now you're doing something else innovative, which I really like because it's a bit appealing to the common man, I'll say. You've been working on something which is all connected, really, on the bench here. And maybe if you want to hold that up for the camera, you can't see this if you are listening to this, but Jack is holding a little jar of, and it says on the jar, instant coffee.
Yeah.
Now, we all think of instant coffee as the cheap coffee, right? The poor man's coffee. And I guess in some ways it is because it is bulk manufactured. It is we love Arabica coffee in Australia.
We do, yeah.
A lot of instant coffee is Robusta, which is a more harsh. So it tastes different anyway, even if it was, like it's never going to taste the same because it's a different type of coffee.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's cheaper to produce, lower altitudes. It's easier to make.
Yes.
So, but it is possible, and I've thought this, and I told you about my hack experiment, which is funny, but you've actually been experimenting with making high quality instant coffee.
Yes.
Can you talk to that a little bit? What's in the jar?
Yeah, I would open it and show you guys, but you wouldn't be able to see. But it's basically just dried espresso.
Right. So espresso shots of coffee. Yep.
Yeah. So it's very, I guess with normal instant coffee, they do it in bulk and they have big machines that extract the coffee and get the solids out.
Yep.
Which is a little bit harder to do. But obviously we think espresso tastes amazing.
Yeah.
So we're just freeze drying the espresso.
Right. And this is Arabica bean.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a single origin coffee as well. We've got two sorts. We've got the blend and the single origin. But yeah, we extract liters of espresso, put it in a freeze dryer, and take all the water out. So it's just dry espresso. Yep. So just rehydrating it in your cup. So I think creating it this way as well is something similar you'd get into a cafe. It loses a little bit of acidity just because of the age of the espresso and the way it's frozen.
Sure.
But it's pretty good. Pretty good coffee.
I mean, when my hack experiment, which was shots of espresso that I made and tried to dehydrate and whatever. But once I re-added water, I tasted it and I said, oh, that tastes like instant, but it also tastes like Arabica. It didn't taste like what was in the cupboard in the jar. Yeah. And I went, it's possible.
Yes.
And I love the idea because to get right into coffee at home, especially espresso, it's expensive.
Yes.
Good grinders, good machines, it's expensive. Whereas for those who are just inclined to get a couple of scoops and add some hot water, hence the term instant, like this is magic. I reckon there's a huge market for it.
Yeah. It's just a very tedious process to do at the moment. But yeah, and rather than doing the hard work at home, it's me in the warehouse pulling the espressos and then drying it.
Yeah.
And then,
so it's very manual and so you got to find a way to do it in bigger amounts.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, it's a cool little project.
Yeah, it's great. So you're doing that down there with Axel Coffee Roasters. Well, good luck with that. I'm really watching that one closely because I've thought about it myself. Yeah. I'd love to, because for me it's a good product because it's something that, because we do a lot of work with Food Bank.
Yes.
And it's a product I could give to Food Bank because you can't give, it's very hard, coffee beans. Like we've got coffee beans, but what does a person do who's either living on the street or in food insecurity issues? What are they going to do with coffee beans?
It's tough.
Instant though, they could use.
Yeah, easily.
So I like it. I really like it. That's fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Jack.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
It's been great to catch up. I can't believe I've got the whole origin story on this one.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I do remember when you were just a young fella walking in.
Yeah.
No experience. It's unbelievable that you've gone from wandering in with your chippy, your rough hands,
tool belt and
hard
hat.
Yeah, to walk out at this point being the best in Australia for this year at least.
Yeah,
at making coffee and the best in the world at making espresso.
Yep.
That's unreal. thank you so much for coming.
My absolute pleasure.
It's been great fun. I want to keep tabs on you, Jack. We'll see if you end up in next year's competition or not.
So there we go.
You might end up because you've coached. Oh, I can't believe we left this out. You actually coached a world barista champion as well.
Yeah. So working with Anthony Douglas. So he's last year's world champion.
He won it last year.
Yeah. So another fun process to go through. Just on the other side, don't get the pressures of being on stage, which is cool.
Yes.
And just helping create ideas and things like that. But he's a very polished competitor, and he's been doing it for a number of years. So he did a great job by winning.
Yeah,
so,
and he come home with the cup from overseas.
Yeah.
So I mean, you've got a few feathers in your cap now.
A couple, yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing what's next.
Yeah, thank you.
Jack, you got to get back to roasting. Those beans aren't going to roast themselves.
Yeah.
So I'll let you go. Thank you so much for coming on the Good People podcast.
My pleasure.
And for those who are tuning in, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and like. It helps us out so much. Check out Axel Coffee Roasters as well, of course. They're doing amazing things down there. And if you want to know more information about us, you can head to iogn.com.au. Tell us what you think of the podcast, all of the bits. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you. This has been the Good People podcast with Australian Barista Champion, Jack Simpson. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Well, it's a tip of the cap, it's a pat on the back, it's a smile from ear to ear. They're the good people from round here.